If someone had asked me what the biggest lie in my marriage was, I would have said it was the little things. The times my husband said he was working late when he was really having dinner with clients. The forgotten anniversaries. The missed birthdays. The promises he couldn't keep. I never imagined the biggest lie had a name and an address. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 64 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed I knew everything about the man I had loved for 38 years. His name was Daniel. We met when I was 23. He was funny, ambitious, and had the kind of smile that made every room feel warmer. We married 2 years later, bought a small house, struggled through difficult times, and eventually built a comfortable life together. We weren't wealthy, we weren't perfect, but I honestly believed we were happy. We raised 2 wonderful children, Olivia and Michael. Both had families of their own now, and our weekends were usually spent surrounded by grandchildren, laughter, and noisy family dinners. Looking back now, I realize Daniel always seemed happiest when everyone was watching. He was the perfect husband in public. He opened doors for me, held my hand, called me my beautiful wife. People often told me how lucky I was. I thought so too. Behind closed doors, though, things slowly changed. It didn't happen overnight. It never does. Daniel became distant. He smiled less. He spent more time staring at his phone than talking to me. Business trips became more frequent. Weekend meetings suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Whenever I asked if everything was all right, he'd smile and say the same thing. "You're worrying too much, Maggie." Maybe I was. Or maybe my heart had been trying to warn me long before my mind was ready to listen. One rainy Tuesday morning, Daniel kissed my forehead before leaving for work. "I'll probably be home late," he said. "Big client meeting." I smiled. "Drive safely." He waved without looking back. It was an ordinary morning. At least, I thought it was. Around 11 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Standing on the porch was an elderly mail carrier I'd known for years. "Morning, Margaret." "Morning, Tom." He looked down at a large cream-colored envelope in his hands. "No return address. Must be important." I thanked him, closed the door, and placed the envelope on the kitchen table. At first, I wasn't even curious. Probably another insurance document. Maybe paperwork from the bank. I made another cup of tea before finally opening it. Inside was a single folded letter. No signature. No greeting. Just one sentence typed neatly across the page. "If you think you know your husband, go to 184 Willow Creek Road tomorrow at 3 p.m. That was it. No explanation. No name. Nothing else. I laughed. Someone had to be playing a joke. I folded the letter and threw it into the trash. But for the rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who sent it? Why me? Why that address? That evening Daniel came home looking unusually cheerful. "The meeting went well," he said. "They might sign the contract next week." I smiled politely while watching his face. Was he lying? Or was I letting one anonymous letter destroy nearly 4 decades of trust? During dinner, his phone buzzed twice. He turned it over before I could see the screen. A small thing, but suddenly, it didn't feel small anymore. That night, sleep refused to come. Around 2 in the morning, I quietly walked downstairs for a glass of water. Daniel wasn't beside me. The back door was slightly open. I stepped outside. There he was, standing alone in the garden, speaking softly on his phone. "I'll see you tomorrow." A pause. "Promise." Then another pause. "No, she doesn't know anything." Every hair on my arms stood up. He turned around before I could hear anything else. I hurried back upstairs, pretending to be asleep. When he climbed into bed a few minutes later, he wrapped one arm around me like he always had. For the first time in 38 years, his touch didn't make me feel safe. The next afternoon, I stood in my bedroom holding the anonymous letter. I kept asking myself the same question. What if this is nonsense? But another question was even louder. What if it isn't? At exactly 2:15 p.m., I picked up my car keys. I told myself I was only going to prove the letter was a lie. I had no idea. I was driving toward the truth that would change my life forever. The drive to Willow Creek Road felt much longer than it actually was. Every traffic light seemed to last forever. Every turn gave me another chance to go back home and forget the strange letter had ever arrived. Part of me wanted to. After all, 38 years of marriage couldn't be destroyed by one anonymous note. Could they? At exactly 3 o'clock, I turned onto Willow Creek Road. It was a quiet neighborhood filled with beautiful family homes. Children rode bicycles along the sidewalks while neighbors watered their gardens. Nothing about the street felt unusual. I slowed my car as I searched for house number 184. Then I saw it. A 2-story white house with blue shutters and a small swing hanging from the oak tree in the front yard. It looked peaceful, ordinary. For a moment I almost laughed at myself. Maybe someone had sent me to the wrong address. Maybe this was all a misunderstanding. I parked across the street and decided to wait for a few minutes. Nothing happened. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I reached for my car keys, ready to leave. That's when a familiar black SUV turned onto the street. My heart stopped. It was Daniel's. I watched as he parked directly in front of the White House. He wasn't supposed to be there. He had told me he was attending an all-day business conference across town. I couldn't move. Couldn't even breathe. Daniel stepped out of the car carrying 2 large grocery bags. He wasn't dressed for a business meeting. He was wearing jeans, a casual sweater, and the comfortable sneakers he usually wore only on weekends. Then the front door opened. A woman stepped outside. She looked to be in her early 40s with dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail. She smiled the moment she saw him. Not politely, not formally. She smiled the way someone smiles at the person they love. Daniel smiled back. He leaned forward and kissed her gently on the forehead. I felt every bit of strength leave my body. The grocery bags never reached the front door. The woman wrapped her arms around him first. They stood there laughing together like 2 people who had shared countless ordinary afternoons. Then something else happened. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, ran out of the house. "Dad!" The word echoed across the quiet street. "Dad!" My husband bent down, opened his arms, and lifted the little girl into the air. She laughed so loudly that even from across the road I could hear her. He spun her around before kissing the top of her head. A little boy followed a few seconds later. He couldn't have been older than 5. Daniel knelt again. "Hey, buddy." The little boy hugged him tightly. For several long seconds, the 4 of them stood together in the driveway, looking exactly like family. Not visitors, not friends. Family. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers began to ache. My mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. No, there had to be another explanation. Maybe those children belonged to relatives. Maybe the little girl called every older man Dad. Maybe, but deep inside, I already knew. The woman reached into Daniel's jacket pocket and pulled out a set of house keys. She unlocked the front door as naturally as if they'd done it thousands of times before. Daniel carried the groceries inside. The little boy held his hand. The little girl skipped happily beside them. The door closed. I sat frozen in my car. Minutes passed, then nearly an hour. I couldn't force myself to drive away. Questions filled my mind. Who were they? How long had this been happening? How could someone live 2 completely different lives? Finally, I started the engine and drove home. I don't remember the journey. I only remember pulling into my driveway and sitting there until the sun began to set. When Daniel came home that evening, he walked through the front door smiling. "Sorry I'm late. The conference ran longer than expected." Another lie. He kissed my cheek. I picked up dinner. I looked at the takeout containers in his hands. For 38 years, I had believed I could always tell when my husband was lying. Now I realized he had become an expert. During dinner, he talked about imaginary clients, imaginary meetings, imaginary contracts. I nodded at all the right moments. Inside, my world had already fallen apart. That night, after he fell asleep, I quietly walked into his home office. For years I'd respected his privacy. Tonight, I needed answers. His desk was unusually neat, almost too neat. The top drawer contained nothing but pens and office supplies. The second drawer held old business files. Then I noticed something strange. A small locked metal box hidden behind several folders. I'd never seen it before. Daniel had always hated locked boxes. He used to joke that secrets ruined marriages. The irony made my stomach turn. I searched the office until I found a tiny key taped underneath the bottom drawer. With trembling hands, I unlocked the box. Inside were several envelopes, passport, a second mobile phone, and dozens of photographs. The first photograph showed Daniel standing beside the same woman outside the White House. The second showed all four of them celebrating Christmas together. The third showed Daniel holding the little boy on his shoulders during a day at the beach. Then came birthday parties, school events, family vacations, Halloween costumes, picnics, smiling faces, years of memories, not weeks, not months, years. My hands shook so badly that one photograph slipped onto the floor. On the back was a handwritten note. To the world's best dad. We love you forever. Emma, Noah, and Claire. World's best dad. I covered my mouth to stop myself from crying out loud. Those weren't someone else's children. They believed he was their father. And judging by the photographs, they had every reason to believe it. Then I noticed one final envelope lying beneath the pictures. It was thicker than the others. Across the front, in Daniel's handwriting, were 4 words that made my blood run cold. If Margaret ever finds this. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely open the envelope. For a long moment, I simply stared at Daniel's handwriting. If Margaret ever finds this, those 5 words told me everything. He had expected this day might come. He had planned for it. I slowly unfolded the pages inside. There were 3 of them. The first line took my breath away. Margaret, if you're reading this, then the life I worked so hard to keep separate has finally fallen apart. I swallowed hard and continued reading. Before you hate me completely, I need you to know that none of this started the way you probably imagine. I almost laughed. There was no explanation that could erase what I had already seen. Still, I kept reading. Daniel explained that nearly 9 years earlier, he had been sent to another city to supervise a large construction project. The assignment lasted almost 18 months. He wrote that during that time he met Claire. According to him, he had been feeling lonely, overwhelmed, and disconnected from home. He claimed one bad decision became another. Weeks turned into months. Then Claire became pregnant. I stopped reading. My vision blurred. 9 years. For 9 years, he had lived another life. I forced myself to continue. I wanted to tell you the truth many times. Every birthday, every anniversary, every Christmas. But the longer I waited, the harder it became. Tears rolled silently down my face. Not because I believed him, because I realized how many opportunities he had wasted to do the right thing. Then I reached another paragraph. I supported Claire and the children financially because they deserved a father, even if I wasn't brave enough to be one publicly. Financially, suddenly everything made sense. The missing money, the strange bank transfers, the unexplained withdrawals, the business trips. Every lie fit together like pieces of a puzzle. Then came the sentence that hurt the most. I never stopped loving you. I closed my eyes. Those words no longer meant anything. Love without honesty wasn't love. It was comfort. It was convenience. It was fear. I turned to the last page. If you've discovered this, then sooner or later you'll probably leave me. You have every right. But before you decide, please remember that every happy memory we shared was real. I wasn't pretending when I laughed with you. I wasn't pretending when we raised our children. I wasn't pretending when I told you I loved you. I was simply too weak to face the consequences of my own choices. When I reached the end, there was only one final sentence. I'm sorry for becoming the man I promised I would never be. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back inside the envelope. Then I looked around his office. Every photo on the walls, every award, every framed family picture. For years, I believed I knew the man who sat behind this desk. Now I realized I only knew half of him. The next morning, I didn't confront Daniel. Instead, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Our family lawyer. Good morning, Margaret. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath. I need to understand exactly what belongs to me. There was a long pause. Is everything all right? No, but it will be. That afternoon I met him at his office. For nearly 2 hours we reviewed every document Daniel and I had signed over the past 38 years. The family home, savings, investments, the construction company, retirement accounts, insurance policies. When we finished, the lawyer removed his glasses and looked directly at me. Margaret, did Daniel ever tell you he changed his business structure 3 years ago? I frowned. What do you mean? He made you a 50% shareholder. I blinked. He what? He transferred half the company into your name. I stared at him in disbelief. I never signed anything. You did. He opened an old file and slid a document across the table. There was my signature. Then I remembered. 3 years earlier Daniel had asked me to sign several tax documents before leaving for work. I hadn't read them carefully. I trusted him. According to the lawyer, Daniel had restructured the company for tax planning and estate purposes. He had insisted everything be shared equally. Ironically, the decision he'd made to protect our future now protected mine. The lawyer leaned forward. Margaret, if divorce happens, you'll legally own half of one of the most successful construction companies in the state. I sat there speechless. For years I believed I had depended on Daniel. The truth was, we had built everything together, and the law recognized it. As I drove home that evening, something inside me changed. For the first time since opening that anonymous letter, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't thinking about anger. I was thinking about freedom. When I walked through the front door, Daniel was already home. He smiled. You're late. I had errands. He walked over and kissed my forehead. The same familiar gesture. The same familiar smile. Only now, I knew it was a smile he'd given 2 different families for nearly a decade. I looked into his eyes, then quietly asked one simple question. Daniel, how many birthdays does a man get every year? His smile disappeared instantly. He froze. Color drained from his face. For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he whispered, What did you just say? Daniel stared at me as though the ground beneath him had disappeared. What did you just say? He whispered. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply repeated the question. How many birthdays does a man celebrate every year? His face turned pale. I don't understand. You understand perfectly. I reached into my handbag and slowly placed the envelope on the dining table. The same envelope he had hidden inside the locked box. His eyes widened the moment he recognized it. You went into my office. I did. You read it. I read everything. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The silence felt heavier than any argument we had ever had. Finally, Daniel sat down. His shoulders collapsed as though he had been carrying a weight for years. I never wanted you to find out like this. I looked at him calmly. Then how did you want me to find out? At my funeral? He closed his eyes. I was trying to protect everyone. I almost laughed. Protect everyone? You didn't protect anyone. You lied to two families. You stole years from both of us. His voice trembled. I know. No, you don't. You have no idea what you've taken from me. I spent 38 years believing I was your only wife. I defended you. I trusted you. I built my entire life around you. And all that time, you were building another home. He couldn't look at me anymore. I never stopped loving you. Those words meant nothing now. You loved the comfort I gave you. You loved the stability. You loved knowing I'd always be here. But love without honesty isn't love. It's selfishness. Daniel covered his face with both hands.
I'm ashamed.
You should be. The room fell silent again. Then he quietly admitted something I hadn't expected. It wasn't supposed to last this long. When Claire told me she was pregnant, panicked. I wanted to tell you, but then the baby was born. And after that, there was another child. I kept thinking I'd find the right moment. But every year the truth became harder to tell. I shook my head slowly. There is never a right time to betray someone. There is only the moment you choose honesty. And you never chose it. His eyes filled with tears. I deserve that. Yes, you do. He took a deep breath. What happens now? For the first time since this nightmare began, I already knew the answer. I've spoken to our lawyer. His expression changed immediately. You have? Yes. He stared at me. What did he say? He explained exactly what belongs to me. Daniel swallowed hard. You know about the company? I do. He looked completely stunned. I forgot. I put half the shares in your name. You didn't forget. You simply never imagined I'd need them. He lowered his head. I never thought we'd end like this. Neither did I. The next few days passed quietly. Neither of us argued. Neither of us shouted. Somehow, silence hurt more than anger. Daniel moved into the guest bedroom. We spoke only when absolutely necessary. Our children noticed something was wrong. Emily called almost every evening. Mom, are you okay? I always gave the same answer. I will be. A week later, Daniel finally asked if we could tell the children together. Saturday afternoon, Olivia and Michael arrived with their families. They smiled as they walked through the front door. Within minutes, those smiles disappeared. Daniel looked at both of them. I've made the biggest mistake of my life. I've been hiding something from all of you. For the next 20 minutes, he told them everything.
No excuses.
No lies, just the truth. When he finished, the room was completely silent. Michael stood first. He looked at his father with tears in his eyes. I spent my whole life trying to become the kind of man you were. Now I don't even know who you are. Without another word, he walked out. Olivia couldn't stop crying. She looked at me instead of Daniel. Mom, how long have you known? Only a few days. She hugged me tightly. I'm so sorry. Daniel tried to speak. Olivia, she stepped back. No, you don't get to explain this anymore. You've already had 9 years. Then she left too. Daniel remained standing in the empty living room, completely alone. For the first time, he truly understood what his choices had cost him. That evening, he quietly packed 2 suitcases. Before leaving, he stood in the hallway holding his car keys. I don't expect forgiveness. I know. I just hope someday you'll remember the good years. I looked at him one last time. I will. But I'll also remember why they ended. He nodded slowly. Then, without another word, he walked out the front door. The same door we had entered together nearly 4 decades earlier. Only this time, he walked out alone. The house had never felt so quiet. For 38 years, every room carried Daniel's presence. Now, all I could hear was the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. For the first few days, I wandered through the house like a stranger. His coffee mug still sat in the kitchen. His favorite chair remained beside the fireplace. His jacket was still hanging by the front door. Every object reminded me of the life we had built together, and the life that no longer existed. 1 week later, my phone rang. It was Daniel. I stared at the screen before finally answering. Hello. His voice sounded tired. Margaret, could we meet? What for? There are things you deserve to hear. I hesitated, then quietly replied, 1 hour. We agreed to meet at a small cafe halfway across town. When I arrived, Daniel already looked different. He had lost weight. His hair, once carefully styled, was now untidy. The confidence that had always filled every room he entered was gone. He stood as I approached. Thank you for coming. I nodded but didn't smile. He sat down and wrapped both hands around a cup of untouched coffee. For nearly a minute, neither of us spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. Claire knows everything. I looked at him. What do you mean? I told her I couldn't keep lying anymore. And? He let out a long breath. She left. I didn't react. The children, they're with her. They don't want to see me. His voice cracked. Emma told me, I don't know who you are anymore. Those words sounded painfully familiar. Our own son had said almost the same thing. Daniel stared into his coffee. I lost both families in 1 week. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt sadness. Not because he deserved another chance. Because one man's fear had destroyed the lives of so many innocent people. Daniel slowly reached into his briefcase. I brought something. He placed several folders on the table. What are these? The company. I've transferred my remaining shares to you. I looked at him in surprise. What? I've already signed everything. The lawyer has the documents. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. I spent years taking from the people who trusted me. It's time I stopped. I quietly closed the folder. I'm not accepting this because I feel sorry for you. I know. I'm accepting it because I helped build that company too. He nodded. You always did. Then he looked at me with tears in his eyes. You know what hurts the most? I waited. I used to think I was protecting everyone. But all I really protected was my own fear. Neither of us spoke again. When we stood to leave, Daniel hesitated. I don't expect forgiveness. I looked at him calmly. I forgave you the day you left. His eyes widened. You did? I forgave you for my own peace. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. He nodded slowly. I understand. We walked in opposite directions. Neither of us looked back. A month later, life slowly began to feel different. Not better, just lighter. Emily visited every Sunday with her children. Michael started dropping by after work just to make sure I wasn't lonely. The house slowly filled with laughter again. One afternoon, while organizing old family photographs, I found our wedding album. I smiled at the young woman wearing the white dress. She looked so hopeful, so certain. For a moment, I wanted to feel sorry for her. Instead, I felt proud, because despite everything she would eventually face, she survived. A few weeks later, there was another knock at my door. When I opened it, Claire was standing there. She looked nervous. I know you probably don't want to see me. I remained silent. I only came to say one thing. She took a deep breath. I'm sorry. I believed every lie. I truly thought your marriage had ended years before I met him. I studied her face. She looked exhausted. Not like the smiling woman I'd seen outside the White House months earlier. She looked like someone whose entire world had collapsed. The children know the truth now, she continued. They're angry. Not just at Daniel, and me too. A tear rolled down her cheek. I should have asked more questions. I should have demanded the truth. I quietly nodded. Yes, you should have. She accepted my answer. Before leaving, she said something I never forgot. We were both living inside the same lie. Then she walked away. I closed the door gently. For the first time, the story truly felt finished. Months passed. Spring turned into summer. The garden bloomed again. I started volunteering at the local library, joined a book club, even took painting classes I'd always postponed because life had been too busy. One afternoon, my granddaughter asked, "Grandma, are you happy again?" I smiled. Yes. Not because everything turned out the way I wanted, but because I finally stopped living for someone else's choices. She hugged me tightly. "I want to be strong like you." I kissed the top of her head. "You already are." Looking back now, people often ask whether I regret those 38 years. My answer is always the same. No, because those years gave me two incredible children, beautiful grandchildren, a lifetime of memories. One man's betrayal could never erase all of that. If my story teaches anything, let it be this. Secrets don't stay hidden forever. The truth always finds its way into the light. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's refusing to let their betrayal steal your future. Daniel spent years trying to live two lives. In the end, he lost them both. But I found something far more valuable. Myself.